answers, feel free to sort of conceptualize a little bit about where your position comes from in terms of your own business. So I'm going to throw this one out there. In what do we feel as though the biggest challenges are currently for us as an industry in reskilling for workforces, be it whatever your particular business looks at? I mean, I'm quite happy for anyone to take that question to start with.
I think I can take that one. Actually, the main challenge, personally, I can see based on the experience, is like the misalignment of the level of BIM, let's say, awareness or knowledge or proficiency between the different stakeholders within the AEC industry, and mainly the VDC one as well. There is two concept key driver for this. One of them is to talk about the engagement, and the other one is about the education. The engagement normally should start like from the owner, from the supply chain itself. Generally, the owner is meant to think about whenever delivering BIM for the operation and the maintenance and facility maintenance later on. However, there is no proper definition of ownership. Who is going to do what exactly? And here we come to that point of the contractual obligations within the project. Are the supply chain stakeholders familiar with this kind of contractual obligations to deliver, yes or no? So for each and every partner within the supply chain, they need to have a kind of self-education, like building the strategy, not to implement BIM within one X project, but to adopt BIM as a corporate practice. This is another mindset to be adopted. That's first point. Building on that, any company who want to adopt the BIM, they should start like defining the goal itself. What's my goal? Am I driven by goals? I'm just driven or constrained by reasons. I have seen like a lot of companies want to implement BIM just because it has been mandated within the contract, and that's it. But not in terms of strategy to work on a proper, as I mentioned, a corporate level or strategic level to adopt the BIM practices, whatever it is, 3D, 4D, 5D, extended up to 7D. This is a major concern I'm seeing. Like it needs a kind of proper roadmap, a proper strategic decision within each and every company.
Further thoughts on the current challenges?
Yeah, I believe that adding to some points, the challenge is, first of all, of course, we need to have a correct framework. Now, thanks to the implementation of the international standards, the ISO 19650, might help some authorities to implement and create annexes to this standard, so that all different stakeholders can have this as a base for them to start implementing within their companies, depending on their role in the projects. And as you're mentioning, it's important to have an implementation strategy. On our point of view, a good implementation strategy is to consider processes, technology, and people. So in order to make sure that people is adopting technology, we should create, first of all, awareness to all different involved parties, and of course to create training.
I mean, there's a question here when it comes to reskilling, and we look at the industry. So I was having a very interesting conversation with some of the guys in the conference earlier. So around 20% of our work kind of goes through BIM, roughly in the Middle East, as I'm reliably informed, which means there's 80% that doesn't. We're already moving on to all of the how many roads down, how far down the road can we take this, bearing in mind that the skill sets that we have here in terms of upskilling our workforce. What do people feel as though the stepping stones to get a bit more engagement from the other 80%? 'Cause, I mean, it's clearly a problem that we've got to address, but it's how do we go around it, bearing in mind the resources that we currently have in terms of upskilling, and is there any stepping stones that you can see on the way as the best to do it? I mean, I'm going to talk as somebody who is just about to take over a role in a main contractor, and I can see that the skills gaps versus where I was previously are quite significant. So anyone got any thoughts as to how we'd want to go around doing that? And what we could break those stepping stones into if you were coming to me as a business manager?
I think there's different levels. There's definitely levels. Like there's the software side of things, but there's also the mentality side of things. Changing from that 2D mentality to the 3D mentality to the BIM mentality, and using those processes. I think when a lot of people talk about training, especially in BIM, they think we'll learn, Trimble software, we'll learn Tekla, or we'll learn Autodesk software and things like this, whereas there's so much more to it. And that has to be led by the client. I think you mentioned a lot of the time the only reason we see BIM in projects 20%, I didn't know that statistic, but I'm kind of surprised that it's that low, to be honest. But a lot of the time it's led, especially with contractors and subcontractors, it's only when it's mandated. They don't realize the kind of efficiencies that it can bring to them if it's used properly and everything like that. Because they don't know, they're not educated within it. They see it as a headache. We can do 2D, boom, 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 like that. Yep. You tell me I need BIM, it's going to slow me down, it's going to do this, it's going to cost me more, which isn't the truth. Really and truly, if you have a properly trained workforce, you're, I'd say, far more efficient using the BIM process rather than using a 2D process.
Okay.
If I can add to that one, building on that, we are mentioning about let's say the transition, to kick off that transition stage exactly. And within each and every firm, company, whatever, it's a design consultant, this is a PMC company, is it a main contractor, is it trade contractor, whatever, or a vendor even, it should start like top to bottom. The awareness should, top down. The awareness should be coming from the upper level, like executive management. Actually, myself, I did have a good experience in conducting one kind of survey across different projects related to building and infrastructure to test the awareness and even or / familiarity with the BIM environment, whatever terminology, whatever practices, and whatever, let's say, infrastructure there. So at the executive level, familiarity is between like 15 to 20%. So 15 to 20% of the executive level management are aware of the BIM and all the, let's say, related key terms and key definitions. For the, let's say, early practitioner, like 0 to 5 years experience, engineering or architectural background or whatever, their knowledge and awareness is about 40 to 45%. Here there is a gap. And I believe the responsibility and the real ownership comes to the mid-seniority level, who are the head of departments, let's say, section heads. These people who are working on day-to-day and hands-on activities. So you can have the strategic support from the executive management. However, the proper application should come through this kind of mid-seniority level. Because the first level, the first layer, like 0 to 5 years experience or 6, most are youth and are well connected to the technology and can embrace all of this like BIM-related technologies and processes.
So in essence, to answer the question, they're doing it in stages. By definition of the churn of the workforce as we all get a bit older, that looks like the more probable routes for adoption and upskilling of our teams. So trying to teach an old dog new tricks or something like that is. Yeah. But then that leads to a bit of a problem because how do you train the executive?
But I think that's the awareness within the industry, and I think UBA are here today are kind of aiming to do things like that because there isn't that kind of across the board BIM requirement, say now at this stage, people don't want to do it. They don't realize the efficiencies, they don't realize the benefits. When the top management realize the benefits and the savings and time, labor, everything like that they can make, I think then it's when the adoption will become kind of, major.
Yeah, actually, David, you had a good question, like saying how to train the executive management. Actually, we are not targeting to train the executive management, but to let them be aware and to adopt that concept. Because with their intent, with their proper intention, like committing or adhering to this kind of practices, it will come up. Like even if the problem is cost-wise, with the executive management support, it can be done, at least for a pilot project. I'm keep saying always like, it's never too late, and better late than never. And that's the point. So whatever company they want to start this one, they have just to put the roadmap, define like ownership. Within each and every department, you can just select one BIM champion to start talking to. However, it should not be like isolated islands. You can have a committee of BIM champion, like one from engineering department, one from site, like site engineer or whatever, at same level, and another committee of sponsors of this BIM championship or BIM, let's say, practitioner. It should be done at this level. It's a matter of awareness on convincing the executive management, sorry, that's the point.
So you're working more on the carrot principle than the stick principle.
Well, I want to just add something here is actually to understand the BIM, the concept of the BIM, is we want to create the module for the building, right?
Yep.
If we want to understand this as a concept and we start from this concept, we have to start the project from all the engineers. Everyone is graduated from university. They have to start doing the BIM straight away. No more 2D CADing, no more going to the traditional method of the design. We have to start from the BIM model, then that's what we are saving money. If we are intent to do it in the opposite way, that's we do 2D drawings, and then we found that, oh yeah, we want to convert to the BIM now, that's what the additional cost, that's where the management will start objecting that and saying this is additional cost, we don't need it. But if we start right from the beginning, everything has to start with the BIM model for the whole project, and this is the methodology we use for the design. And that's the only methodology used for the design. That's where we can see the benefit of the BIMs and the cost saving and all the benefits we are looking at. But I think all the people are at the moment who are graduated from universities, junior engineers, they all use BIMs.
Okay.
Because all the software now is BIM enabled and also all of BIM. The problem is with the people who is in the age of 50s or 60s, they said, why are we using that? We already have a project before done, a very successful project without the need for using that. So what particular reason for this? So this is a real challenge that we have, I guess.
I would like to add also, translated to actually to the construction field. So just from my experience point of view, we know all that BIM is new, still new to a lot of people. I just heard a couple of times people talking about only about the 3D modeling still. Unfortunately, it's everyone knows it's a full process of implementation. To answer the question about not executive directors or managers, but what I do most of the time just to share the knowledge and the experience that I have faced, and everyone facing actually the similar, that most of the team members, engineers that we get is normally they understand 3D model. So we are not speaking about this anymore. Everyone knows how to use the tool. But I think the most important part is to indeed to train is our main managers on the project. Like for example, in my case, it's going to be the project directors, project managers on the project, the senior managers first. Let them understand actually what the whole BIM is about, not only the 3D modeling part that they have experienced. And most of the time they are quite skeptic and negative what they have experienced in most of the projects. So the first is give them the knowledge, what could be implemented on the project, why. So not give them high expectation with most of the, unfortunately, we sell still the story of BIM that can do everything. It can be done, yes, indeed, if you have the right skills and very experienced people on the team, whereas not the case. So I train actually most of the time first the major managers, because I want them first to be on board, rather actually my engineers or the whole team that are actually working below them, because that's most important for me. Let them understand and let them come up with a certain agreement. We're gonna do this, and if this is there, we bring it to the next level. So it's a type of different entry level of giving people a trainee. And I do it on the project-wise, project-based, separate from the head office, where they implement that. There's a certain way of approach, because you can customize it. And when you customize it, you can educate them in the right way in a short period and to be more effective. And I think from my point of view, I've actually not really bad experience in this case. So upscaling, it's something that you need to do assessment, which type of resources I have, and how can I improve them and then make them understand what we're gonna implement it. Because in the BIM management plan, I always take a certain portion where I explain which type of trainee could be also incorporated. And it's not only for my own internal team, but it's also for the subcontractors and even the clients. Miro Asset Management, one of the clients, is very, and they are really keen to implement BIM, and they are even forcing us to use the new technology. And one of them, they are also offering in their package that we can get trainee for the certain package that they are asking us to do. So that's actually from my experience point of view and to the construction field.
So the collective view is, by the sounds of it, we believe that the industry is keen to do it and keen to get involved with it, but the buy-in at the senior level is the critical point for this. And that you've now got all of the young graduate engineers all the way moving through that are already relatively upskilled in terms of their ability to deploy these models on their projects. Is that a fair statement?
I'd say to a point, I think you have to look at the different interest groups as well, whether it be consultants, contractors, client groups, sub-consultants. I think the major developers are definitely moving forward. You mentioned morale, major developers are moving forward with the BIM, whereas medium-sized, maybe just pure residential developers and companies like this, they haven't really got that much interest, I don't think. I think they have the way they do things and they'll just push on with that. But again, on going kind of back to the training and the higher management level, definitely for the likes of contractors, you move to a contractor, the contractors seem to be doing it an awful lot on the project base. And just further to your point, do you find sometimes that it's too late almost when, right, we have to do BIM, well, we've been on the project for 2 months and we're only thinking about this now? That's a major issue that we see an awful lot as well. Because I know you mentioned that you're kind of doing it on a project-by-project basis.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem is what I've seen, and everyone start from somewhere. So what I've seen most of the time that they rather recruit a BIM coordinator to be the next BIM manager. But the problem is if the BIM coordinator, with all the respect for the junior part, if they don't know what the end product is, would it be very difficult to start the project correctly. And we know it's all about in the starting stage of the whole implementation. Otherwise you will really be working the opposite way of doing it. So I think the recruitment is important. Who's going to lead this project? And if he even comes later stage, it still can be done properly. But yes, it will be
difficult, and we're kind of constantly finding then as well with regards to timing. You're coming at the late stage, but everything still has to be done in the same amount of time and everything like that. So
it's only extension fire. Yes, absolutely, I agree.
Okay, well that's quite interesting. Some kind of. Would you say then that your experience is the UAE is kind of getting there a little bit better, or in terms of its upskilling? Because I mean, or do we still see a skills gap across the region, or is it better here? I mean, where's the challenge most for us in terms of getting our message across? Do you think?
From my experience, I've worked and lived in Holland for many years. After that, I moved to Belgium. So in Europe, it's adopted in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a different region. I've seen many times that we upscale the people and they leave right after upscaling because they believe they are now experienced. And I tell many times, do not think that. You need to first experience, you need to execute it first before you can understand it completely. Because training is something, and I think the resources is to make it quite difficult here because we are all in a certain region that is, I think the salary and the packages is very attractive to a lot of people that make them move faster rather than staying actually in a company. But then you get the question, what if we don't train them and they stay, and what if we train them and they leave? That's a difficult one.
Okay, I suppose when you start upskilling the whole of the workforce, as we start to see it through, there's less of a problem in terms of seeing people sort of flip-flop jobs, as it were, at the moment. And in the economy at the moment, it's probably people staying put a little bit more. So I think, would you suggest that now is the time to put training in, given that we've seen some weakness within our industry, because it is relatively quiet in terms of work that's been awarded to contracting and consultants and supply chain over the last year or so? When's the right time to be investing in this, and what does the next evolution of this look like for the industry, and when should that investment be considered to be made? I'm thinking as a businessman here. So anyone want to pick up on that?
Is it working? Yeah?
Yep.
From my experience in BIM implementation, I've been doing this for the last 2 years in Siemens, specifically the airport solution and logistics division of Siemens. I joined Siemens to implement BIM from scratch, where there were no any BIM capabilities. And what I have experienced in these 2 years, there are 2 main points I want to stress on. The first one is you cannot implement BIM with the full package of BIM usage or uses, let's say, at once. There should be something like a BIM maturity matrix where you can go up gradually. And this leads to the second point where the BIM implementation is usually driven by the project requirement. When we start to receive BIM project requirements, for some projects we receive a different requirement than the other projects. One client, he might ask for a COBie delivery as a BIM deliverables, but the other one he will ask just for a 3D and for coordination and clash detection. Now, so from the executive management point of view, it will not be logical to implement let's say, the 4D of BIM, while the project does not ask for this specific requirement. So I think we should be a little bit patient, and we should understand what the executive or the company owners they are trying to do. So, so from my opinion, if we go with the project's BIM requirements one by one and start to implement BIM gradually, we can put a time frame and we can keep monitoring this BIM maturity matrix within our organization and until we reach to our goals. So, and at the same time, we should be ready. At least the know-how of all BIM aspects should be there. Our processes, our workflows should be ready. So even if the project does not require any COBie delivery, but I should have at least the COBie generation and COBie verification workflows ready. So whenever I receive a project with such a requirement, then I can go directly. So the cash flow here is a little bit difficult. So I'm kind of understand why we cannot implement everything at once. It will be a big load in a single project. So it should be separated in a number of projects. But if we are following this process in 2 to 3 years time, and after let's say winning number of projects with different BIM requirements, we will reach to a BIM maturity level which is good enough. And actually it will, we will guarantee that the BIM process will be run over all the projects with a different requirement, even if it doesn't need any BIM requirement. And this is not only in the UAE, this is like around the world. We have a BIM projects from Mexico airports, Dublin now we are doing, Hong Kong, all over the world they're asking for BIM, especially for projects like airports. And for everyone there is a different BIM requirements. So I think implementing BIM in this way gradually, let's say, I think will be, let's say, a steady and the best way to implement BIM.
Okay.
Well,
so,
just want to add something. We have to agree on statement.
Yep.
That doing BIM is a cheaper option. Cheaper design, if you do it in BIM, and cheaper in execution. If you agree on this statement, then we can move forward.
Yep.
If you still talk about, no, BIM is more expensive, we're not going to move. Now we're talking this event, this summit today, about what is beyond the BIM. So all the people in the world now start thinking, what is beyond? What do we have to do now? Because the BIM in the UK is something that's now everyone is using it. It's not discussionable.
That actually plays quite well to the question I was kind of going to ask, which is really where's the responsibility that sits in here. So we've got the client, we can mandate, we could potentially get the government to mandate the utilisation, which would kind of drive the upskilling, because you'd have to do it for every single thing. We've got, and where does the client entity, if it was private sector, where does the consultant, contractor and the supply chain really sit in terms of their responsibility for upskilling, does the panel think?
Well, it's already, in 2007, it's been mandated in the UK. So every project after 2007, it has to be done with BIM. And in Dubai, I think it's 2017, they already announced that all the projects has to go on the BIM. For the GCC country, I know the deadline for that is 2021, I guess, to have all the government projects to be running the BIM. Actually, the basic benefit of the BIM is for the owner, because the owner is going to use this module for the facility management and for the GIS information and for running the whole project. So the government has to start with this, which is already started in the UAE, and then everyone else will be adopted.
For continuity, did anyone actually think we should look at sort of the mandating across the GCC? Because I know I've already seen these variances and align it to, say, an international standard. I mean, and then that way we've got a baseline as to what we should be doing, so we can train up to that level for those that are required. I mean,
yeah, I believe that the key challenge to the industry is not just training or upskilling our staff and the people involved during the process. The key challenge is to change the mentality of people that BIM is not just an evolution of CAD, which many people is still considering that BIM is just an evolution of 2D CAD. And BIM is much more than that. It's first of all considering all the stakeholders, all the project life cycle, and how this is affecting all the supply chain and how this has to be considered. So the key challenge is to change the mentality of people to understand what BIM is, and that it's not just an evolution of CAD.
But for the cost of rolling out a BIM standardization for training purposes, as well as from a management perspective of how much it's going to cost, would there be a net benefit in having a training and a standard, such as ISO 19650? And we stick to that for the GCC? I mean, I'm trying to think about ways to make this challenge a little bit easier for the industry, given that circa 20% of our projects are currently in that format across the region.
Well, let me answer this question, because we are 12D, we already developed software it's a BIM software. So having a standard is, the reason we have the standard at the beginning is because of the softwares wasn't talking to each other. So when we create which is 12D model, it wasn't able to read it in AutoCAD. And that's why the standard comes up and force everyone to use the standard. And then now the standard is how to gonna use the BIM technologies, and they divided the BIM to different levels and how to use each level in each project. So basically that's the main thing about the standard. But at the moment what people are doing, especially the software development, we put in the engineering standard inside the software. So the computers now will be able to correct your design rather than just doing the CADing for the model. At the moment, what you're doing is the software has to tell you if this is right or wrong in the middle of the design. So there will be like the built-up standard for in the softwares that will help the engineers to correct their designs. So basically, that's the idea of it.
Okay, but I mean, I still haven't quite established. Do we think that there should be do you think there's a GCC-wide standards for everything that we implement, for, say, all government projects, which represents roughly 80% of the spend, either directly or indirectly within our industry? Do you think that stick approach is preferable to the carrot approach, or do you think there's a combination of those, both legislative and also persuasion of executive management?
To do it across the GCC is probably too wide, but definitely on a country basis, it shouldn't be, for here in particular, it shouldn't be Abu Dhabi doing one thing and Dubai doing another thing, which is what's happening right now. So in that sense, like the UAE as a whole, yes, should 100% adopt a UAE standard.
Yeah, because I was sort of thinking of sort of the cost of implementation, because it's an interesting one. When you think about it from a business owner, you've almost all referenced it's costing me money, so the return on investment piece for the software, but also for the training, because there's a lot of man time comes out of your business to be able to get skills up to the level that you would need to operate in an effective and an efficient manner.
Just from authority approvals point of view, Dubai released an RFP there 2 months ago for basically an e-submission platform, which effectively will require every submission to Dubai municipality to be through BIM. So that's one thing that's obviously going to lead BIM in the country, or in Dubai, if that happens. So let's assume that platform is ready in 1 year's time. then basically every single submission to Dubai municipality will have to be through BIM for approval. That'll also have an automated code checker on it. So that's going to create the standard for Dubai. The issue is going to be is Abu Dhabi are going to do the same thing, but will it necessarily be the same system? Probably not. So therefore, you can have an office in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, one working on Dubai projects, one working on Abu Dhabi projects, and working to a completely different BIM standard from further designs, further approvals, further municipality submissions and everything like that. So that's, I don't know whether it answers the question, but it's definitely going to cause issues because you could have guys 100 kilometers down the road being trained differently than
which causes, again, thinking like a businessman, it causes potential problems, and then you get cost inflation, etc. And does that constrain your workforce a little bit? Well, very good example. Does it constrain my Abu Dhabi workforce from coming down to work in Dubai for 6 months because there's no project for them to work?
Well, the software will be the same, as in the authoring tool, whether it's a Trimble tool or another vendor tool or whatever, that'll be the same. But I think Dr. Anis kept on mentioning naming standards earlier when he was up here. You can have a completely, just something as simple as that, a completely different naming standard for a submission that needs to go to the Dubai municipality or to Abu Dhabi municipality, which is going to cause issues because, again, you're just learning.
Thank you very much for our panelists today. It's been very entertaining and very interesting listening to your views and experiences. Could you put your hands together and thank them, please? And I'll hand back over to